Sometimes you think you have life figured out, and then reality smacks you in the face so hard, you wonder if you ever knew anything at all. I'm Avery. I'm 27, and I just learned that some people will surprise the hell out of you when you least expect it. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy my stories, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. I've got plenty more drama where this came from. So picture this. I'm living in this gorgeous 2-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend Reed. We'd been together for 2 years, living together for 1, and I thought I had everything mapped out perfectly. The lease was in my name because my credit was better. His was still recovering from some medical debt situation. But here's the thing. I paid the security deposit first month's rent and furnished the entire place when we moved in because Reed was between jobs at the time. Reed's one of those guys who's really particular about everything. Like, obsessively organized, keeps receipts for every single purchase, takes photos of serial numbers. The whole 9 yards. I used to think it was cute, this meticulous way he had of documenting our life together. He'd show me spreadsheets of our expenses, color-coded and categorized. I'd just smile and nod while internally rolling my eyes. Such a control freak, right? But as the months went by, I started feeling trapped. Not trapped exactly, but like I was living someone else's version of what my life should be. Reed had this way of planning everything out, having opinions about which restaurants we should try, which shows we should watch, even which friends we should hang out with. He wasn't mean about it, but he was always so sure about everything, so confident in his choices. It started to grate on me. I'd catch myself looking at other couples and wondering what it would be like to just be free, to make decisions without having to consider someone else's input, to come home to my own space, decorated exactly how I wanted it, without having to compromise on throw pillows or wall colors. The apartment really was beautiful, though. Reed had incredible taste. I'll give him that. The sectional couch was this gorgeous piece from West Elm, probably cost more than my car payment. The TV was one of those massive OLED things that made everything look like you were actually there. The kitchen was like something out of a magazine. He'd bought this amazing espresso machine that I used every single morning, plus all these fancy appliances that made cooking actually enjoyable. But the more beautiful our life looked, the more suffocated I felt. Does that make sense? It was like living in a showroom where everything was perfect, but nothing felt like mine. Even though we split expenses, Reed always seemed to be the one making the big purchases, the ones that really defined our space. I contributed to groceries and utilities, but he was dropping thousands on furniture and electronics. I started having these fantasies about what my life would look like if I was single again. I'd imagine coming home to my own place, maybe something smaller, but entirely mine. I'd picture myself exploring the city, meeting new people, having adventures that didn't require checking with someone else first. The more I thought about it, the more appealing it sounded. Reed must have sensed something was off because he kept asking if everything was okay. "You seem distant lately," he'd say, or, "Is there something you want to talk about?" But how do you tell someone that their presence in your life has become overwhelming, that their love feels more like a cage than a comfort? I started pulling back, spending more time with my friends, staying out later, being less available for his planned date nights. When he'd suggest we watch a movie together, I'd suddenly remember I had plans. When he'd ask about my day, I'd give him the bare minimum. Looking back, I was probably being cruel, but I felt like I needed space to breathe. The breaking point came on a Monday evening. Reed was in the kitchen making dinner. He always cooked another one of his thoughtful gestures that somehow annoyed me. And I was sitting on that expensive couch scrolling through Instagram, looking at all these single friends living their best lives. Travel photos, spontaneous adventures, nights out that didn't end at 10 p.m. because someone had to be up early for work. That's when I made the decision. I was going to end this. I waited until after dinner when Reed was doing the dishes. Of course he was. And I asked him to sit down. "We need to talk about us," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He dried his hands on the kitchen towel, this cute little set he'd bought that matched our color scheme, and came to sit beside me. What's going on? I've been doing some thinking, and I don't think this is working anymore, and I need to explore who I am without being in a relationship. Reed just stared at me for a moment. I expected him to argue, to ask what he'd done wrong, to beg me to reconsider. Instead, he just nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Breakups happen. I'm an adult. His calm reaction threw me off, but I pressed forward. Here's the thing. Since the lease is in my name, I'll be keeping the apartment. You need to move out by the end of the month. Another pause. So you're breaking up with me and kicking me out? I'm not kicking you out. I'm just exercising my legal right to the apartment. It's nothing personal. He looked around the living room, at the couch, the TV, the carefully curated collection of art on the walls. What about all the furniture, the TV, everything I bought? I actually laughed. The audacity of the question struck me as almost childish. Well, it's in the apartment, so it stays with the apartment. Don't be petty about some furniture, Reed. That's when he got this look on his face. Not angry, not hurt, just calculating, like he was working through a complex math problem in his head. Makes sense, he said finally. I smiled, feeling like I'd handled this perfectly. I knew you'd be mature about this. Reed went to bed early that night, claiming he had a headache. I stayed up late already, mentally redecorating the space, imagining how different my life was going to be. I felt lighter than I had in months. Free. The next morning, Reed left for work at his usual time, giving me a kiss on the forehead that felt more patronizing than affectionate. Like he was humoring a child who'd just announced they were running away from home. Whatever. In a few weeks, I'd have the place to myself, and he'd be someone else's problem. I went to work feeling energized, telling my coworkers about my newfound independence. They were supportive, of course. You deserve to be happy, my friend Carly said. If he wasn't meeting your needs, then you did the right thing. I came home that evening, planning to start looking through Reed's things, maybe helping him pack so we could speed up this transition. I wanted him out as soon as possible so I could start my new life. But when I opened the apartment door, I stepped into a completely different world. The living room was empty. Not just Reed's stuff, everything. The couch, the coffee table, the TV stand, the massive television. Gone. I walked through the apartment in a daze. The dining room table and chairs vanished. The bedroom furniture, including the bed frame, nowhere to be found. The kitchen appliances, the espresso machine I used every morning, the fancy blender, the air fryer, all of it gone. Even the small stuff. The rugs, the curtains, the smart home devices, the decent hangers from the closet. He'd left my clothes neatly folded on the floor where the bed used to be, along with my mattress, but everything else had disappeared. The apartment looked like a model unit before staging. Just white walls, basic fixtures, and carpet. It was like a ghost town version of the home we'd built together. I called Reed immediately. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. I tried texting, "What the hell did you do? Where is everything?" No response. That's when I called the police. This had to be theft, right? You can't just take someone's furniture because you're upset about a breakup. 2 officers showed up about an hour later. I was practically hysterical by then, sitting on the floor of my empty living room, trying to explain how my ex-boyfriend had robbed me blind. "Ma'am, do you have proof that this property belonged to you?" the older officer asked. We lived together. It was our stuff. But do you have receipts, purchase records, anything showing you bought these items?" That's when it hit me. Reed, with his obsessive record keeping, his spreadsheets, his photos of serial numbers, he'd documented every single purchase. And I hadn't bought any of the big stuff. I'd paid for groceries, utilities, my share of rent. But the furniture, the electronics, all the things that made this place feel like a home, that had all been Reed. He has the receipts, I admitted, but it was for us, for our life together. The officers exchanged a look. "Ma'am, without proof of ownership, there's nothing we can do. If he can prove he purchased these items, then legally they belong to him." They left me sitting in my empty apartment, and that's when the reality started to sink in. Reed hadn't just moved out. He'd systematically removed every trace of the life we'd built together, taking with him all the comfort and luxury I'd grown accustomed to. I had no couch to sit on, no TV to watch, no coffee maker for my morning routine. I couldn't even make dinner because he'd taken all the pots and pans. The apartment I'd been so excited to have to myself was nothing but 4 walls and a mattress on the floor. My phone buzzed with a text from Reed. Moved out as requested. Keys are on the kitchen counter. I typed back furiously, "You can't do this. This is theft. I'm calling the cops again." But even as I sent it, I knew he was right. Technically, legally, he'd only taken what belonged to him. The problem was, apparently, everything that made this place livable belonged to him. I tried calling my friends, but they all seemed confused by my outrage. "Wait, so he bought all the furniture and you expected him to leave it when you kicked him out?" Carly asked. I mean, I get that it sucks, but even my own friends were taking his side. It was infuriating. The next few days were a nightmare. I had to sleep on my mattress on the floor. I bought a cheap coffee maker from Target and realized I didn't even have a decent mug to drink from. Reed had taken those too. I was eating takeout off paper plates because I didn't own actual dishes, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I recruited my cousins Ray and Bo to come with me to Reed's new place. I'd found his address by following him after work one day. If he wanted to play hardball, fine. 2 could play that game. We showed up on a Saturday morning, pounding on his door. "Open up, Reed. We need to talk about getting my stuff back." He answered through the door camera. Of course, he'd installed a security system at his new place, too. "Your stuff isn't here, Avery. Please leave. The furniture is mine, too. We live together." "I have receipts for everything. This is harassment." Ray tried to reason with him. "Look, man, just let us in so we can sort this out." But Reed had already called the police. They arrived within minutes, and once again I found myself trying to explain to officers why my ex-boyfriend was a thief. Once again they asked for proof of ownership. Once again I had none. The cops actually seemed annoyed with me this time. "Ma'am, we've explained this. Without documentation proving these items belong to you, this is a civil matter. You need to stop harassing this man." Even my own cousins looked embarrassed. Ray pulled me aside as we were leaving. "Avery, she told us he robbed you, but if he's got receipts proving he bought everything—" "She lied to us," Bo added. "This is messed up." They left me standing in Reed's parking lot, having to call an Uber because they refused to give me a ride home. That's when I decided to take this public. I posted on Facebook about my situation, painting myself as the victim of a vindictive ex who'd left me with nothing out of spite. "Some men really can't handle rejection," I wrote. "Imagine being so petty that you strip an entire apartment because your ego got hurt." My friends rallied around me in the comments. "You deserve better." But, what a man-child. This is financial abuse. But then Reed posted his own response. 3 photos, a stack of receipts totaling over $15,000 for a screenshot of my text saying, "It stays with the apartment," and a photo of his new place fully furnished with the caption, "When she keeps the apartment, but you keep everything else. My stuff, my choice." His post got shared way more than mine. People I didn't even know were commenting things like, "She really thought she could keep his furniture," and "The audacity is unreal." The social media battle was not going my way. That's when I made what I thought was my smartest move. I decided to take Reed to small claims court. I was asking for $20,000, more than he'd even spent, but I figured I could claim emotional distress and loss of peaceful enjoyment of my residence. My friend Finn, who'd just graduated law school, looked over my case. "Avery, this is going to be tough. He's got documentation for everything, plus your own texts admitting the apartment was yours alone. But we were together. It was our life. Legally, that doesn't matter unless you were married or had some kind of written agreement." I didn't care. I was convinced that once a judge heard my side of the story, they'd see how cruel and vindictive Reed had been. Court day arrived about a month after the breakup. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews, figuring I needed to look professional and sympathetic. Reed showed up in khakis and a polo shirt, looking annoyingly relaxed. I went first, explaining to the judge how we'd built a life together, how everything in that apartment was ours, how Reed had vindictively stripped it bare, leaving me with nothing. Miss, were you and the defendant married?" the judge asked. "No, but we had an understanding." "Any written agreement about property?" "No, but there was an implied partnership." Then it was Reed's turn. His lawyer, he'd actually hired a real attorney, stood up with a folder full of documents. Receipts for every item totaling $15,247, screenshots of my text saying the apartment was mine and he needed to vacate. even doorbell footage of him peacefully removing his belongings during daylight hours. The judge reviewed everything quickly. "Miss Avery, did you send this text saying, 'The apartment is mine, you need to move out?'" "Yes, but—" "And did you tell him, and I quote, 'everything in the apartment stays with the apartment?'" "Yes, but I meant—" Case dismissed. The defendant removed his personal property from a residence he was told to vacate. Plaintiff owes court costs. I started crying right there in the courtroom. "This isn't fair. You left me with nothing." The judge looked annoyed. "You left yourself with nothing when you assumed someone else's property was yours." Next case. Outside the courthouse, my mom was waiting. She'd driven down to support me, but instead of comforting me, she walked straight up to Reed. "I'm sorry about all this, Reed. You're a good man. She needs to grow up." Mom, whose side are you on?" "The side that didn't quit their job to manifest their dream life while expecting someone else to pay the bills." Wait, I'd forgotten about that part. 2 weeks before I broke up with Reed, I'd quit my job at the call center. I'd been reading about manifestation and decided I was going to focus on finding my purpose instead of wasting my life in corporate drudgery. I figured Reed could cover my share of expenses until I figured things out. My mom continued, "She thought you'd leave the furniture and keep paying half the rent until she found someone else." Reed just stared at me. "You quit your job before breaking up with me. You were planning to have me subsidize your self-discovery journey while living in an apartment I couldn't even access." When he put it like that, it sounded bad. But that wasn't how I'd seen it at the time. I'd seen it as taking control of my life, refusing to settle for mediocrity. "It was my apartment?" I protested. "My name was on the lease." "Your name was on the lease because my credit was recovering from medical debt, but I paid for everything that made it livable." My mom shook her head. "Avery, you can't claim ownership of things you didn't buy just because you dated the person who did buy them." They left me standing there arguing in the courthouse parking lot while people stared. That was 3 months ago. Here's where everyone ended up. I got evicted from the apartment because, surprise, I couldn't afford $1,800 a month rent without Reed's income. Turns out my manifestation powers didn't extend to paying bills. I had to move back in with my parents, who made me get a job at another call center and pay them rent. I tried dating apps using photos from the old apartment to make myself look successful. But someone recognized the place and tagged Reed in the comments asking if this was the girl who tried to steal your furniture. My profile got roasted so hard I deleted it within hours. Most of my friend group distanced themselves once they learned the full story. Carly still talks to me, but even she's different now. "I don't understand why you thought you could keep his stuff," she said during one of our coffee dates. "Like, if my ex bought something, it's his. That's just basic." Reed, meanwhile, seems to be thriving. I drove past his apartment complex a few weeks ago and saw him loading groceries with some woman I didn't recognize. She was pretty in an understated way, and they looked comfortable together. Easy. The way Reed and I used to look before I started feeling trapped. The worst part is everyone acts like I'm the villain in this story, like I deliberately tried to steal from him or something. But that's not how I saw it at the time. We were a couple, we built a life together. When couples break up, they usually split things fairly right. But I guess fairly doesn't mean I get to keep everything that makes life comfortable while you start over with nothing. I guess fairly means whoever bought it gets to keep it. I mean, yeah, technically Reed was right. Legally, he owned everything he took. But there's a difference between being legally right and being morally right, isn't there? We were together for 2 years. That has to count for something. Look, maybe I handled things wrong. Maybe I should have been more considerate about how I broke up with him, or maybe I should have offered to buy some of the furniture from him. But did he have to be so thorough? So calculating? He could have left me the coffee maker. He could have left a few basic pieces so I wasn't sleeping on the floor. But no, he took everything right down to the shower curtain and toilet paper holder. That's not justice, that's revenge. And now I'm stuck in my childhood bedroom working at a job I hate while my parents lecture me about responsibility and growing up. Reed gets to move on with his perfectly organized life and his new girlfriend, while I'm left dealing with the consequences of wanting to be independent, wanting to explore who I am outside of a relationship. I don't hate Reed. I nothing him. He taught me a valuable lesson about keeping receipts and reading the fine print of life. But I also learned that some people will surprise you when you think you have them figured out. I thought Reed was just this dumb, meticulous, accommodating guy who'd be devastated to lose me. Turns out he was meticulous enough to document everything and smart enough to protect himself legally, and accommodating right up until the moment I tried to take advantage of him. Between us, I still think he could have handled it differently. But sitting here in my parents' house, eating dinner off the same plates I used in high school, I'm starting to understand that maybe the problem wasn't Reed's response to our breakup. Maybe the problem was thinking I could have my cake and eat it too. Keep the apartment, keep the lifestyle. Lose the boyfriend, avoid the consequences. Turns out life doesn't work that way. Turns out when you tell someone to leave, they might just take everything that belongs to them when they go. Who knew?